Welcome into another episode of the Young Terps podcast. Ahmed Gafir and Mason Viner breaking down Maryland's 31-9 win over Michigan State in East Lansing. Let's start it off as we always do on the post-game pod. Instant takes. Ahmed, go ahead.
Yeah, obviously, I think the fast start was what a lot of fans were happy to see. But I think the defense, obviously, with being able to finish with 5 takeaways there, obviously a couple in the fourth quarter to help seal the win. I think this is the big thing. I think just kind of going into the 2023 season, I thought a lot of Maryland fans recognized what Deontay Banks, what Ja'Cory and Bennett were able to do in terms of pass deflections, but kind of being able to translate some of those deflections into turnovers. And Maryland's shown a lot of those flashes really through non-conference play, but I thought that really stuck out today. Was a really big piece in why Maryland won. I thought that was definitely an encouraging sign.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I'll go ahead and talk about safety play. I mean, I think that is the thing that stuck out all day between Glenn Miller, Bo Braid, and Dante Trader. The amount of impact plays the Terps can get from the secondary players, specifically the two quarterbacks of the defense, as they like to call them. Dante Trader is all over the field when he's playing, and with his running mate in that, Bo Braid, back out there today. The Terps defense just looked really strong, especially in run support. That's something that you have to watch with this team as they still, I feel like, are developing their defensive line. But check another box on Maryland's Big Ten bucket list, I guess, or checklist. They finally get a win in East Lansing. They've been close a couple of times, but they finally get it done today with the convincing final score. But I'm not exactly sure if it was the most convincing whole game performance that we've seen from Maryland.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think a lot of fans, like I said, the fast start is I think what a lot of fans would like to see. Now I think that next step for Maryland is to obviously play that 60-minute game. The offense I think was able to really find its groove through that first half, obviously, but kind of some lulls there. Obviously, that interception there in the red zone by Talia in the third quarter, second drive of the second half there. So obviously some things to clean up, and like I said, that 60-minute complete performance is probably something Maryland will look at against Indiana with Ohio State coming up next. So definitely some room to work with. But to steal a Mike Locksley quote, it's always easier to correct those mistakes after a win.
It sure is, and the Terps get it done in East Lansing. Ahmed, let's talk defense first. We've been talking offense first most of the time. Let's jump over to the defense. We both mentioned it in our instant take. What'd you see out there from Terps? Only give up 9, but Michigan State definitely moved the ball.
Yeah, obviously it's pretty interesting, when you look at the final score and then look at Michigan State ended up, I think it was 14 total yards that Michigan State ended up out yarding Maryland in today's win. But obviously, like you said, just kind of with the takeaways there, and obviously Maryland, kind of having to deal with a couple or enjoying a couple short fields to lead to potential score opportunities. I think contributed in kind of maybe that that little disparity there. But like you said, obviously just kind of setting the tone off early with that Bo Braid interception. Obviously, he missed last week's game with a concussion there. So obviously, like you said, Dante Trader, Bo Braid, both those guys finished 1-2 in terms of tackles. But yeah, definitely, like you said, just kind of the encouragement there and kind of, forcing Noah Kim to, really make the deep throws and whatnot. I thought Michigan State, obviously they were able to find a little bit of success, but the consistency really wasn't there. And I thought was a big reason why that Spartans weren't able to, they saw some success, but it really was Maryland bend, don't break kind of defense.
Yeah, and I think that's what we've seen from Maryland as they've kind of strengthened this unit. And I think today was one of the uglier 9 points that you give up games that you'll see from a defense as a unit. I thought you mentioned some of those deep balls. I think Tarheeb still, despite him picking up another interception on the season, is struggling a little bit in that boundary corner spot right now. He seems to, you can kind of see it from his reactions after the plays, not necessarily be all the way happy with where he's at right now, despite still being able to make some big plays. Two different items, I think, was Maryland continues to work out their rotation. Isaac Bunyan, obviously one of the few injured rotation players that Maryland had today, was a revised rotation that brought Caleb Wheatland down into the box, kind of in that Sam Jack hybrid linebacker spot that the Terps have had. They found a role for him there, and he picks up a sack and a half on the game today. So bit of a change for Wheatland to get him on the field more. I think Jayshon Barham should probably also move into that rotation down there to get him on the field more. But just the amount of guys that Maryland is playing in that front seven, especially at linebacker. Seeing them go three deep with that rotation. We've talked about it here as one of the strengths of the team, but ultimately that and I mentioned it on our Tuesday pod this week, but I'll say it again. Either Gavin Gibson needs to get all the way back for Maryland to really solidify that defensive backfield, but the Terps have got to find a nickel back. The Lionel Whitaker, Corey Coley, Glenn Miller rotation on there is I think leaving a little bit of a hole in this defense, and it might be the only one that's really still outstanding for what has become a really solid group that forces a lot of turnovers. 3 interceptions on the day for the team. They forced 3 fumbles, recovered 2, so 6 opportunities for turnovers in that. They get that fourth down stop, which you can almost add that as another turnover. And then again, strong on the 2 point conversions, those short yardage situations. They were a little bit, they didn't never really push the line back on, but overall, full body of work. What matters is the amount of points that your opposition has up on the board. And so far this season, 20 points from that Charlotte team is the high against them with a garbage time touchdown. So you'll say really 14 meaningful points in any given game that came from Virginia early in that one and Charlotte as well is really where this team sits. And that should definitely put a smile on your face as a Maryland fan.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And you mentioned Caleb Wheatland. I think he's a guy. I mean, when you see him, I think I know he obviously that linebacker room. We've talked about it, especially that inside linebacker room is just so deep. So many guys can kind of come out, different tandems, just a lot of different combinations that really adds a lot of versatility to that defense. But like you said, I think Wheatland with that, the classic linebacker, neck roll, whatnot, and I think he's just a fan favorite. I think and the fans got a chance to see a little bit of him. I believe it was last week. Going into that Virginia game when he was up at the podium, but today, obviously, he left a big imprint on the game, leading the defense with a sack and a half, TFL and a half as well in the win there. But like you said, just kind of being able to find that nickel corner, I think, is a key emphasis. And I think Avante Williams, is a guy that we haven't seen a ton of really through these first 4 weeks of the season. Obviously, Gavin Gibson kind of coming back. This is his second week back, coming and dealing with a lower leg injury that sidelined him from the second scrimmage on. But yeah, I thought Glenn Miller, I think he's done really well, and I think he's a really big asset in run support. And I think when he's on the field, more often than not, you're able to kind of feel his presence. But again, just kind of figuring out that third corner, which Corey Coley, he's another guy that he's kind of been able to kind of had those moments where he's been able to step into the rotation as a boundary corner, but still kind of some work to do there. So definitely some work to do, but I think just kind of going against Indiana, I think Maryland will be able to maybe try and experiment a little bit before they have to gear up for this Ohio State passing attack.
Yeah, and we finally actually saw Avante Williams in the field in the game making a play. I think it was either the first or the second kickoff of the game where he was the one that made the tackle for Maryland when was seen multiple times on the sideline. So definitely I think as he works his way into the rotation, he can factor in at that spot. But bottom line is this team, the way they like to play physically, the way they like to have their corners and secondary members up and run support, to do that, you really have to be able to play man on man, unsupported defense or having a safety like Dante Trader was on one of the deep balls that Noah Kim connected on, where he's up in the box and he's really supposed to backfill and be that kind of cover, in that case, that center field or cover safety in the specific scenario that I'm talking about. And he's just not there. And when your corner is relying on that support, that's one thing that I think B will point out to his guys this week is, we got to be in our spots a little bit. Everybody loves to run up and make those big hits on this defense, but you have to, have that eye discipline, have that discipline to stay in that and not bite the play action fake like we've seen them. Those are the only times this defense is really getting burnt right now, is when Trader and Braid and Miller really want to step up and make a big play, and they're just not where they're supposed to be. I think that's my one thing that when really sticks out when you watch them against the deep ball.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think you kind of saw some of those concerns or weaknesses kind of show up in week 2, week 3 with a couple of those big plays as well. But yeah, again, I think Michigan State they were able to find some success, but still Kim finished 3 of 12 on yards, 15 yards or more downfield in this win. So I think again, Michigan, Maryland secondary. Again, kind of a bend don't break mentality, kind of for them specifically, but still able to keep a lot of that in front of them. But definitely, I think kind of when you look at the secondary, it was pretty clear that you kind of felt Bo Braid's presence back on the field as he and Trader, like we said, finished 1-2 on the team in tackles.
All right, and let's flip it over to the offense. But before we do that, got to welcome a podcast sponsor back with us here on the Young Terps. Our first sponsor has returned with us to help out here with the show, and that is Watercrafters in Gaithersburg, Maryland, who has been providing swimming pool services and supplies to the Montgomery County and Howard County communities for the past 41 years. There is no better place to get your pool closed with this winter than Watercrafters. They're highly skilled service staff. I just mentioned they can close your pool, they can open it come springtime, as well as provide new equipment installations, repairs, and weekly service. The Gaithersburg retail showroom has everything for your swimming pool, including chemicals, parts, and fun accessories. Visit Watercrafters in the Gaithersburg Air Park or online at watercrafters.com. We thank them for sponsoring us here on the show once again. And just big shout out to them. They're our first sponsor here on the show with us. And as we build back up the Young Terps pod, they're back with us here as a podcast sponsor. So talking offense, I think the Terps had the strong start that everybody wanted to see, Ahmed, but then kind of slowed down coming out of the halftime break.
Yeah, I think obviously, like we said, just kind of being able to for the offense especially, I think they should get credited because of the defense. Obviously, Bo Braid kicked off the game with that interception, and then the offense was kind of able to go out and kind of capitalize there, turn that into points there. So Maryland turned in touchdowns on their first three drives, and again, just were able to really find their groove. Didn't look like there were a ton of big plays, and especially maybe the running game or whatnot. Colby McDonald was able to flash there for a 25-yard gain. But again, we got to the second half. Maryland got into the red zone, and it was an ill-advised pass by Talia trying to force it into Ty Felton, and partly, a good catch by the Michigan State DB there to reel in the interception. But nonetheless, points that could have gone on the board that didn't, that probably could have helped end the game a little bit earlier, helped crush the Spartan spirit a little bit earlier in the game to kind of maybe set the tone going into the second half. So, like you said, I think there were a little bit of lulls. Just you saw it last week when you talked to Talia, when you talked to Deshaun Jones. They felt there's some success, but there's still another layer that we can probably get to, another level where that we kind of all recognize what this passing attack is capable of, and we haven't seen it yet. Kind of hope that we would for a 60-minute stretch especially against a Spartan secondary that Chuck Brantley, he was out today, so that was they had some depth concerns there, but nonetheless, I think one thing that did stick out to me was Deshaun Jones. It looked like I didn't see him on the field at all in the first half. I believe I saw him a little bit in the second half, but Maryland able to find 11 different receivers in the win. I think again, a lot of what we saw the first 3 weeks. A lot of good and a little bit of bad.
Yeah, I would agree with that. One of the biggest good things I think of was the play calling in the first half. I thought that was exceptional from Josh Gaddis and Kevin Sumlin to really put together a good game plan to come out here. The biggest thing that I will say, and Maryland fans love to be critical of the coaches, so I think this is one spot where you really have to give them props, is the new corner that was out there, Rucker, 25 for Michigan State, freshman out there first game. Maryland constantly, immediately adjusted their game plan to attack that weakness of Michigan State's defense. And as the game settled in, credit to Rucker. He got better as the game went on, but early they identified that. The biggest stat that jumps out to me in this one has to be Maryland's rushing attack, especially Roman Hemby, 10 carries for 12 yards in the game. Not a strong game from Hemby. Maryland really struggling between the tackles to run it. Their zone looks with Antoine Littleton, their counter looks a little bit stronger. That got him going, but still no more than 40 yards from any of Maryland's rushers in this game. And the big play that I think really sold it for me, really made this a stronger win for Maryland, was Octavian Smith's late touchdown on that screen pass. Just showed, even though it was a screen, that Leah bounced back, still delivered a strong ball. Maryland was struggling in the screen game throughout this one. And when you look at, year over year improvement and what Locks has talked about working with Leah, it is being able to come back and still deliver good balls to his receivers late in the game when things might not be going exactly the way that he wants them to. I thought the read option was a really good look, and Maryland just did a strong part of really closing the game out fast. The middle of the game, they struggled, but Locks always says he wants to finish it stronger. But I did really think Maryland came back and finished the game strong. It was that kind of third quarter where the game, the air was just out of the ball for both teams. Neither team was moving the ball particularly well. It's kind of up and down, turnovers going both ways. It was not the best football game, I would say, to watch. It was not really well played by both teams down the stretch.
Yeah, I would say that. In regards to the running back room, Mike Loxley said that post game. He said that Roman Hemby was a little bit limited this week with dealing with some nicks and bruises there. So if you hit him, obviously Golden Spangler's 14-yard rush that helped extend the drive, and Octavian Smith he added another 5-yard run. Maryland, the running backs almost averaged 6 yards per carry, and obviously we talked in the past, the last couple of weeks, Colby McDonald, a guy that's really been able to kind of step up, capitalize on the reps, initially where it's Wayne Littleton losing because of unsportsmanlike call, and ever since then, McDonald's kind of picked up and run or picked up the carries there and finished, pretty strong, I'd say. Obviously finishing today with 38 yards, 25-yard long on the drive there. But I think just being able to find a little bit more balance and a little bit more consistency on the ground. I think obviously you want Roman Hemby back, obviously back at 100%, or what he's able to do in the second level, making guys miss things like that. So I think that's maybe an area where Maryland wants to continue to just kind of build on it. But you mentioned the play calling, and I think Maryland did a really good job just kind of creating balance kind of throughout the game. I mean, almost second and third and fourth quarter, almost an identical split between pass and run plays, and just kind of really just kind of taking advantage of what Michigan State was kind of able to do. So again, I think it kind of just goes back to the biggest thing going into next week is just kind of being able to play that complete game, like you said, just in that middle part, that third quarter there, that lull where Maryland was able to convert a little bit more. And then I think offensively, I think falls on special teams, but I think just kind of with the way that some of these offensive drives ended, Maryland's kicking game, obviously with Jack House finishing one of three with misses, I believe, from 28 and 40 yards out in the game. So little bit of concern there. So we'll see if that unit's able to bounce back against Indiana.
Yeah, that was one thing that I wanted to bring up was the kicking game at this point. I think goes into the concern bucket. I thought that a lot of people saw Howes in those first couple of games, knocked down a couple kicks, thought, he's not going to be Chad Ryland right away, but definitely can add to Maryland in that spot. Um, they just, you got to know if you're locks, you got to go to your kicker. Obviously, you want to put those points up on the board, but whatever they need to do maybe to clean up the unit there. I saw, the snap really having Spangler have to rotate the ball a couple times, get the laces out, just work through getting that clean as you ease a new player into that role. That's going to be real important for Maryland if they find themselves in close games. The other spot is the punting game for Maryland. I feel like is extremely strong. They obviously they convert on the
Yeah.
fake, which is something we haven't seen this team do, I believe, in years. I know they tried a couple under Durkin, but they were never really successful with that. That was definitely a step up in that area that Maryland pulled that, kind of rabbit out in that moment. And then, should have had a punt that was pinned within the three, but nobody downs it. And it ends up in the end zone, and an overall real strong average and game from Colton Spangler, who has become, kind of a silent strength of Maryland's team, is being able to punt the ball and have a punter that can hit those inside the 10, inside the 20 pins for you.
Yeah, and I think Maryland last year. Obviously, I think it was Spangler and Anthony Pecorella kind of splitting duties a little bit, and end up being kind of Spangler taking the bulk of those punts there. So I think kind of that special unit, that third unit, excuse me, could potentially be a strength. And again, like you said, just kind of figuring out Jack Howes. Again, it's not you look at the stats. I mean, he made a 48-yarder today, and then he missed 29 and a 40-yarder. So I mean, he has the length and or the distance, and we've gotten to seen it in the past. Obviously, I know he missed that 55-yarder a couple weeks ago, but again, probably just something a little bit more consistency or whatnot. I think that's maybe the biggest kind of concern that I wasn't expecting kind of going into the season. So, but again, when you talk about the offense and whatnot, just kind of being able to find that rhythm and the big plays there, I think that's kind of what we've kind of been able to see flashes of, and just again, just doing it for a 60-minute stretch is the big thing now.
All right, couple more things to get to. First off, got to give us props on our betting picks this week. I think we hit both. Both of us take the over on Maryland's points, which hits 30 and a half. Maryland just beats that one out with 31. And then obviously the Terps on the game line, even if you took it at the end when it reached 7.5, came back down to 7 for those of you that track it today. So wherever you found it, Maryland covers, and both of us successful picks and pretty much spot on with score predictions. Not quite on the 9 side, but really had Maryland's offense pinned in right in those low 30 numbers. for today. Quick look ahead before our Tuesday show. Maryland welcomes in Indiana to College Park. Family weekend coming in, looks like a really strong crowd. And as of now, even though we're getting some real bad weather here in Maryland today, a week from now, so far looks like it's going to be sunny and in the 70s. So perfect fall football weather comes to College Park. But real quick, what are you looking for Maryland next week? And what probably should be I'm thinking Maryland probably a 10-point favorite come tomorrow when we see those initial lines.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it'll be pretty interesting to see Walt Bell, Anthony Tucker, both former Maryland assistants, back in College Park next weekend. But yeah, again, I think just again, like I mentioned a couple of times, I just want Maryland to play that 60-minute complete game. I kind of want that rushing game to kind of have that breakout performance, kind of force defenses to play a little bit more honest against what should be a balanced offense for Maryland. And then again, I want Maryland to be able to kind of take advantage of some of these big plays. I think I've been able to see flashes of it. Caden Prather's able to show flashes through non-conference play, obviously leading the team in receptions today. But I just kind of want that offense to kind of find its groove there, hit that next level going into a really big game on the road against Ohio State.
Yeah, I think for your defense, you want to see more of the same. A team that put up 3 points against Ohio State, 14 points last week against Louisville. Right now, they're playing as we record this pod. They're about to head into halftime, up 7-3, I think, right now against Akron, which is not a good team, not having a strong year in the FBS. So Indiana probably an opponent that you can expect to run out of the building, and that's what I want to see. We'll talk about it more on Tuesday, but you talked about the complete 60 minutes. For me, it's just really being able to show that from start to finish, they really do finish the game. They take, you mentioned taking the spirit out of Michigan State. I think I said that over on the Terp Talk post game show that we did right after. Was they just never took advantage of that moment. Like, it was there when you're driving down the field and you throw an interception in the end zone, you miss a field goal. Finishing everything and doing it right. I think that's something that Locks is going to talk about, whether you call it the complete 60 minutes or really, finishing drives, finishing the game. I think that is what you want to see from Maryland. And then I really would like to see them continue to convert short yardage third downs. I think that's something that this team struggled with Locks. I think they have a much better pattern, whether it's the quarterback sneak or Antoine Littleton running between the tackles, just those little things, continuing to build on those. And then obviously having your defense dominate the game, which is I think everyone's come to expect that heads out to the game and that follows this team, is that the defense will dominate it. But more on that on the Tuesday show. Ahmed, anything else to add on Michigan State?
No, I mean, I just think Maryland fans going into Ohio State. A lot of fans said what they 4-0, 4-0. That's what we want. And I think Maryland fans obviously they were able to take some shots today. Still some things to work on, but I think this is a really sound team, and I think that a lot of the unforced, the dumb penalties, the dumb errors that we've seen in the past, like yeah, they're still coming up, but they're not as many as in years past. So I think there's a lot to be excited about. Obviously, winning in East Lansing for the first time in 83 years or 73 years there. I think that's a feat in itself there. But again, I think that this team kind of has a chance to really hit its stride going into the heart of conference play.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And on that point, I mean, everybody asks for this team to be 4-0 right now. Those of you that have doubted it and said you won't go out to the games, they never win this game, that they're not in that moment. I would take that this time to almost embrace the fact that Maryland's going to be 4-0 and has that big chance to, have a crowd at home, 3:30 home game, get out there. It's probably going to be the last game this year at CQ where the weather is going to be any sort of kind of
Yeah.
decent, sit outside and enjoy a football game. I would say that it's really time for people to, basically shut up and show up to the games. If you're somebody that's followed this and has given every excuse to not go out to the stadium and support the team, I think that they're starting to really answer a lot of those questions. And you mentioned the stupid penalties, and frankly, I really like that Loxley seems a little bit pissed off even when they're beating a team like Michigan State 31-9 on the road. I like
Yeah.
that when we show him after the 15-yard penalties in the game and after even some of the 5-yard penalties in the game, he's clearly, as well as the other coaches, pissed off. I
Yeah.
think that that's something that I like to see, that they're rewarding the guys that play a clean game. They're taking the guys out when they get a penalty, and they're trying to do everything to make that Terps versus Terps, as they call it inside Jones Hill House, be a non-factor and really, step up and just play a clean game, do things right, and go about, building a program that's not going to make those mistakes, and that plays a much better, much cleaner game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I know it's a cliche. I know it sounds like coach speak, and I get it. I completely get it. If you're a fan, you see it and you roll your eyes. But that's what Terps first Terps. It's kind of just what it's all about. Just setting the standard for yourself, and if you're setting that standard for yourself, doesn't matter what other people are doing. You're unhappy or you're happy based on what you know that you can do based on X, Y, and Z. So again, lot to be happy about, and we'll see if it's enough to beat one of the big boys.
Yeah, well, not quite yet. We'll talk Indiana on Tuesday here in the podcast. As always, give this podcast a like, give it a thumbs up on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Drop us a review. Make sure you subscribe and click that download button. Really helps us out here on the podcast. For Ahmed Gafir, I am Mason Viner. And as always, thanks for watching. And thanks for listening.